So with Steven Universe being over and everyone still being trapped in their houses, I'm sure a lot of you are asking yourselves, what's another cartoon I can watch as the world slowly tumbles into chaos? And my answer for you is The Owl House. The show just wrapped up its mid-season finale, so there are currently 10 episodes out right now as it enters hiatus. Now, with this show coming out at the start of 2020 and Steven Universe being the end of an era for cartoons, the obvious question is, will The Owl House usher in a new decade for animated shows? And in my opinion, the answer is a resounding yes. Now, I could just leave the video off there for you guys, but for those who still may be on the fence, or for those of you who have already watched the show and just want to hear my thoughts, I figured I would try and cater to both parties. So the way this video will work is that I will leave timestamps for you all here. The first part of this video will be spoiler-free and give my general thoughts on the show as a whole for those who may still be on the fence. The other part will be me going into spoilers on all the episodes from my least favorite to my most favorite and all of the characters. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into it. The Owl House is created by Dana Terrace, who previously worked on Gravity Falls as a storyboard revisionist and was the director of the first season of DuckTales. From an article in the LA Times, the original pitch for the show was a girl becomes a witch and learns under this old woman mentor. Apparently, a colleague of Terrace told her that's a dumb idea, and now here we are at the show's mid-season finale with the second season already on the way. The show's main character is Luce, a quirky, fun, weirdo teen who gets magically transported to another world known as the Boiling Isles. I like Luce a lot because she's the weird kid who does things her own way, and I see a lot of my younger self in her. When I was in elementary school, I didn't play hopscotch or jump rope with the girls at recess. I went out into the grassy fields with the boys to catch grasshoppers and other bugs. In middle school, when all the other kids were talking about whatever the hit latest show was, I was thinking about Naruto and Full Metal Alchemist. In high school, when everyone else was worried about finding a boyfriend or a girlfriend, I was perfectly content with staying home on a Friday night and doing a Miyazaki movie marathon. Despite her being a bit of an oddball, she always tries to see the good in others and offers a listening ear to those in need. Needless to say, I relate to Luce a lot and would probably also be interested in staying on the Boiling Isles if it meant I got to learn magic. Now, the Boiling Isles should almost count as a character itself because the Owl House by far has one of the most unique, creative, and mysterious settings I have seen out of an animated show in a long time. The Boiling Isles is a chain of islands that are formed from the decomposing corpse of a titan. So that's already like an insanely cool creative concept. But the amount of thought that goes into the world building is truly top-notch. Take for example the Witch Arena. This snow-covered area is on the knee of the Boiling Isles, the most elevated location, hence why it resembles a snow-covered mountaintop. Or another example, Bonesborough, which is located here, a city where witches, demons, and creatures all live together. Just seeing how this city functions is intriguing and how the show is able to take expectations and then turn them upside down. This also leads to the other point of character design. The Owl House has by far the best character designs I have seen for any show. And this just isn't for the main cast, this is also for the background characters as well. Like seriously, whoever designed this needs a raise. Why does mouth for head with tongue for hair work? You'll also see a lot of great designs at Hexside School of Magic and Demonics. It's basically the Hogwarts of Bonesborough. The students here are incredibly diverse in terms of design, and here we also meet Willow, Augustus, and Amity. But back to the plot. After being transported, Luce meets Ida and King. Ida is definitely a highlight for watching the show, and I would argue that her character alone is enough for giving the show a watch. She's fun, rebellious, and sassy, yet has a softer side for those she truly cares about. Additionally, while she may come off as arrogant or overly confident, she has the spellcasting abilities to back up her claims. Ida's backstory is also another reason to tune in. 10 episodes in and there is already plenty of mystery and questions in regards to this rebellious witch's past. King is the former king of demons, but after having his powers taken away, he now looks like this and plots to reclaim his rightful place. He's loud, feisty, lazy, and can be self-centered, but when it comes to protecting those he cares for, he'll stop at nothing to achieve that. Luce eventually comes under the tutelage of Ida, and while it may not seem like Ida would be a good mentor, she does have her moments where she shines through, though not always in the way that one might assume as a mentor. And this is really the focal point of the show, the mentor and student relationship of Ida and Luce. My favorite part about this is that Luz helps Ida grow as a character just as much as Ida helps Luz. Maybe it's because I'm getting older, but I definitely find myself relating a lot more to adult characters in animated shows. While many shows focus on the teen protagonist, it's nice to see the adults, such as Ida, get some development as well. A student-mentor relationship doesn't just go one way, and I feel that the Owl House is doing a good job capturing that. Outside of the world and characters though, the writing is also very well done. The Owl House hasn't fallen into your typical cliches or tropes in terms of the story. The writers seem to have a pretty good grasp of what their goal is, showing a dark yet whimsical and comedic world through the eyes of a teen and how that in turn affects those around her. The comedy is also fantastic as well, and the writers clearly know who their audience is. I'm pretty sure I've laughed in every single episode that has aired so far, so outside of the dark magical adventure, you also have comedy to balance that out.
But I don't like any of that stuff. I like editing anime clips to music and reading fantasy books with convoluted backstories. Oh, hello, little fairy. Are you going to tell me this is all a fantastical dream? Give me your skin! Ah!
Oh yeah, we banished those guys. A bunch of freaks.
Ah!
Oops, that happens sometimes.
The show also looks great. It features a nice contrast of oranges and blues, but when it wants to go for a darker tone, they typically use grays, blacks, and greens. And there are plenty of different locations that are visited, so there are many diverse settings with varying color palettes and designs. The animation is also fantastic. Without spoiling anything, here are just a few scenes that have some incredible animation.
I won't let you get away again!
So if nothing else, you just want to see a show that has good animation, the Owl House will probably be that for you. If someone had no idea what the Owl House was and wanted to hear a short pitch on it, I would probably say if you liked Harry Potter but wanted it to be more dark, whimsical, and comedic, then you'd probably like the Owl House. Even if you're not a fan of Harry Potter, you'll probably still enjoy it because the Owl House differentiates itself in terms of story, tone, and writing. So if you're feeling that you're in the mood for something a bit darker and comedic out of an animated show, then I can't recommend the Owl House enough. But if you're like me and have already watched all 10 episodes of the Owl House, welcome to the spoiler section of the video. To start off, I'm going to quickly go through the reoccurring and main characters we have met so far and give my thoughts on them. Is there a work of fiction or something else? I feel like she's too relevant in the show thus far to be just a fictional character, who knows though. Basha, actual mean girl, bad influence on Amity. Bartholomew, a little jerk, but he's written to be unlikable, so he's fine. Tibbles, night market hustler who's a jerk, vowed to get revenge on Ida, and it's already confirmed that we're going to see him again in the newest promo. The Bat Queen, still somewhat of a mysterious character, and I look forward to seeing her more in future episodes. I like her compassion for protecting other palismen that have been forgotten. Also, I still want to know what that skull whistle does that she gave Ida. Owlbert, palisman created by Ida, he's cute and I hope he never gets hurt again. Principal Bump, honestly I really like this guy. He seems like he genuinely wants the best for his students, as seen when he switched Willow to the plant magic track after seeing what she can do, felt he failed as a principal with Bartholomew, and welcomed Luz to Hexside. Seems like a pretty cool dude. Emera and Edric Blight, Amity's older twin siblings. They're jerks, but I don't hate them. I feel like there's more to them than just being mean to Amity. They seem to genuinely like spending time with Luz, and don't seem to hold grudges against her even though she ruined their plan of posting Amity's diary around the school. They're definitely complicated characters, and I'm sure we'll see them again, hopefully with them not being as mean to Amity. Lilith Clawthorn, the mysterious sister of Ida and head of the Emperor's Coven. Apparently she's promised something in return for retrieving Ida for the Emperor. She clearly seems to have a soft spot for Ida, so I don't see her wanting Ida to get hurt. I like her character a lot and I hope we get to see even more of her in the future. Hooty, the Owl House? Hooty controls several things within the Owl House, such as the door and lights, but it's unclear of what Hooty actually is, although it seems that Ida created him in some way like Owlbert. Honestly, I'm curious about Hooty because there are pictures shown around the house where the tower is present but no Owl House. Gus. I like Gus a lot, unapologetically himself, dancing around in front of others to celebrate his little accomplishments, and not concerned with being the most powerful witch, despite getting good grades and even skipping a couple grades. He's basically the opposite of Amity in terms of how characters act when they are good students. I'm happy that he is no longer the president of the Human Appreciation Society because I want his character to grow in other ways than just being the president of a club at school. Willow, a refreshing and realistic take on the quiet, nice girl. When introduced, we see Willow as the victim of Amity's bullying and sympathize with her pretty quickly. But it's also shown that she can get angry and frustrated to the point of losing control of her powers. We also see that she can be a bit petty in wanting to prove to Amity that she's capable of being a witch. Willow is still an incredibly kind and sweet character, willing to do anything for Luce and Gus. But instead of being the typical nice pushover girl, she has her faults, and that makes me love her even more. Also, I'm hoping that Luce can be the bridge that leads to her and Amity being friends again. Amity Blight. She's my favorite character, she's my moody yet golden-hearted daughter, and I love her and I want to see her flourish. Honestly, probably one of the best examples in how to write a bully character. She's complicated and layered and has a ton of potential when it comes to a character arc. If you want to hear me talk for over 24 minutes about Amity, then I suggest you click on the card in the top right corner or click the link below. King, the former king of demons? Maybe? Out of the main cast, King's backstory is still the most mysterious as we don't know how much of his claims are true. There's a small part in Convention where King mentions being the king of artists. Based on his facial expression and the musical cue when Luce calls him out, I'm suspecting that there's some truth to this claim, but King is a loud and self-centered character, but when it comes to Luce and Ida, he will do anything to protect them. He seems to be dealing with a Napoleon complex in always feeling like the little guy and being overlooked. But after the episode The Intruder, I feel like King took a big step in his character development in admitting his mistakes and being honest. I love King a lot and I want to learn more about his past. Edelyn Clawthorne, the rebellious witch criminal known as Ida the Owl Lady. Cursed when she was younger by an unknown individual, Ida lives her life selling human junk in Bonesboro while avoiding the town's guard. She's fun, witty, sassy, and like King can be a bit selfish at times. And while she may not be the greatest teacher when it comes to learning magic, she is actually very wise when it comes to life lessons. Obviously not the being a wanted criminal part, but when it comes to helping Luce dealing with her insecurities and uncertainties when it comes to being a witch, there is truly no one better than Ida to help her. And like I said before, as much as Ida is helping Luce, Luce is helping Ida grow as well. Because for the first time, Ida's world doesn't revolve around Ida anymore. She has Luce now and has to think about what's best for Luce. A prime example of this being Ida putting aside her grudges against Hexside and enrolling Luce. Though she may hide it, Ida does have a maternal side and genuinely does care for Luce and King. Luce Nacetta. I honestly feel like so many people my age could have used a character like Luce when they were around 12 to 15, because as I get older, I notice how many of the people I know were into weird and nerdy things like anime, video games, and fantasy. Even now, I can relate a lot to Luce. I think it's great that we get the oddball character who in the human world didn't have any friends, but despite that, still is kind and tries to see the best in people. We see this with Willow and Gus as they all become fast friends, and we see how Luce tries to befriend Amity. I also think Luce is fairly mature. We've seen her take accountability for her actions like holding a moonlight conjuring without Ida's permission, apologizing to Amity at the convention for the abomination mishap, attempts to apologize to the abomination professor for the same incident, and not wanting to cheat when facing Amity in the witches duel. We also see that she has an open mind to new ideas as seen in convention when she still wants to attend the Emperor's Coven panel despite Ida's teachings. And I think that's incredibly mature. I love Luce a lot and see many aspects of myself in her, and I can't wait to see what other adventures she goes on during her time on the Boiling Isles. Next, I'm going to go through each episode from my least favorite to my favorite and quickly go through what I liked. So here's my list. I'm kind of cheating a little bit because I have Convention and Lost in Language tied as my favorite, but both of the episodes are so good I couldn't pick. So at the bottom we have Once Upon a Swap. And even though this episode is at the bottom, I don't think it's bad. I still think it's a good episode, because this definitely seemed to be aimed more as a comedic relief episode, and I think they succeeded in that. Ultimately, this episode was the body swap trope, and I'm kind of thankful that they did this trope sooner rather than later. The highlight of this episode is that we get to see Lilith again, and we find out that Ida actually wanted to join the Emperor's Coven with Lilith when they were younger. And we also see, even though Ida, who is really loose, is set to be taken away to the conformatorium, Lilith is still fighting to try and help Ida. Lilith is definitely an interesting character, and I look forward to seeing her more in the future. Next, we have Witches Before Wizards. I like that this episode took the idea of the Chosen One and a magical quest and turned it on its head, where Luce was actually being manipulated the whole time. And I think the message at the end here by Ida is actually really great. I like that Ida doesn't outright say Luce can't be special, rather she's got to work for it and make her own path. Outside of the message at the end, I found the dynamic of Luce, Ida, and King interesting because in the first episode they all seemed pretty amiable. But now with all three living together and Luce starting her apprenticeship, we see some of the lower moments between the three. And while yes, Ida and King were jerks for laughing at Luce, it's good to see their dynamic has its ups and downs. Because Ida goes to Luce even though she knows it's a trap, offers to give herself up for Luce's safety, and then gives her a stellar view of the Boiling Isles and that nice message at the end. Also, the design of Adagast was stellar, could definitely see this guy giving younger kids nightmare fuel. Up next is a Lying Witch and a Warden. Despite this being lower on my list, I still think this is a solid episode. I think it does a great job of introducing us to the characters of Luce, Ida, and King, as well as showing us the creepy, whimsical, and comedic world of the Boiling Isles. There's plenty of comedy in here, and I also thoroughly enjoyed the Warden as the bad guy for this episode. An awesome design, and I like how his initial goal was to ask Ida out. I also like how Ida is willing to risk her life for King's crown. And at the end, despite how much King protested Luce's affections, can't help but spend the night sleeping on her sleeping bag. I will say that the message of being a weirdo and that's okay was a bit heavy-handed, especially when you look at the rest of the episodes. Luce's weirdness gets toned down a bit and she comes off more as quirky. But all in all, I still really enjoyed this episode. Next we have Something Ventured, Someone Framed. Right off the bat, I don't mind Bartholomew as a character. I feel if a character is written to be mean and unlikable, then it's okay to not hate them. That's not to say that I like him, I'm indifferent. He's a little jerk and I'm okay with that. While the whole Bartholomew versus Gus is considered the A plot for this episode, I honestly think the B plot was more interesting. I do like that we got some more backstory on Gus, that he's younger because he skipped some grades, and that the only place he felt like he mattered was at the Human Appreciation Society. But what Ida does in order for Luce to enroll at Hexside I found to be more intriguing. Because we see all the pranks Ida pulled in her youth and how she has to right her wrongs with the sole intention of getting Luce enrolled because she knows Luce will absolutely love it there. Ida even says that her grudge against Hexside is her own and she shouldn't project that onto Luce. I will say that Gus did the right thing in the end in taking the blame for the detention fiasco and having Principal Bump allow Luce to enroll. Next we have Hootie's Moving Hassle. I like that this was another episode where we got to see Willow, Gus, and Luce all hanging out. Considering that Gus and Willow only had each other as friends, it's clear to see the impact that Luce is making on them to have another friend around. I like that Willow wanted to stick it to Amity. Willow, who is very soft-spoken and kind, had a moment of being petty and wanting to show off to Amity. And I like this a lot. In most other shows, a character like Willow would just be the shy, nice girl, and while she is that, she has her moments of being petty or selfish as well. But we understand where she's coming from when she reveals her and Amity used to be friends, but stopped playing together when Amity got her powers first. For years, Willow felt inferior to Amity, and for the first time in her life, she felt bigger than her. And honestly, that's just really good writing. I Was a Teenage Abomination is up next. I like this episode mainly because it introduces us to Hexside, Willow, Gus, and Amity. Hexside seems like a really interesting location, and even though it was just our introduction to the school, we know from Something Ventured, Someone Framed that Luce will be attending here soon. So we have a lot to look forward to in terms of seeing what else goes on at the school. I love Willow, Gus, and Amity. More on Amity in a bit. And I'm excited to see more of them since Luce will be classmates with them now. I like the idea of having tracks that correlate to different schools of magic. We only see the Abomination track in this episode, but we know that there are 8 more. I think the friendship between Luce, Willow, and Gus is cute, and I like how they're all oddballs and became fast friends. In retrospect, looking back at the end of this episode is a bit odd since Luce gets banned, but realizes Ida may be a better teacher than she initially thought. only for us to go back to the same issue with Luce being unhappy with Ida's teaching 6 episodes later in Something Ventured, Someone Framed, and then Ida enrolling Luce. Just a bit weird looking back, but I feel that this was more of a lesson for Ida than Luce. With Escape of the Palisman, I like that we get further backstory on the Bat Queen and how she was a palisman for a giant. And I'm sure this mysterious giant will come into play later since Luce offered to help the Bat Queen look for them. We also get some backstory on Owlbert and how Ida created him from the bark of a tree, so I'm sure we'll go there at some point. Outside of character backstory, we see that Ida's curse is worsening and she is transforming more often, and that her elixir is losing its effect, meaning that finding a way to reverse the curse is becoming paramount. The Intruder could honestly also be tied for my favorite as well, but I felt that having 3 favorites would be too much. The Intruder is able to tackle a lot of things. Ida's backstory, King and Luce's friendship develops, and we get Luce learning how to do magic. Out of all the episodes in terms of importance, this would probably be at the top, probably being trailed by Convention. The reveal of Ida's curse is well done and has an incredible design. I think the relationship between Luce and King is great, and it really took a huge step forward when King opens up to Luce about not having friends and feeling like he doesn't matter. And we get Luce learning her first spell, which honestly opens up a whole room full of questions like, was Luce the only one able to see the symbols? Because it doesn't seem like King could see them. Why did the ways of old magic go away? How does old magic work? Does it use the energy of the caster or something else? Plus, we have other questions of who cursed Ida, so plenty of things to keep watching for. I'm just gonna be real and say that I may be biased with these 2 being my favorite because they have Amity in them. Now I'll start with Convention, and while yes, Amity does appear in this episode, there are plenty of other things going on. Convention gives us some lore on how covens work in the Boiling Isles, and we get a new character, Lilith, who is Ida's sister and the head of the Emperor's Coven. So we find out more about the world, further develop Ida as a character, and have Amity and Luce take that first step in their road to a potential friendship. I think the highlights of this episode are the fight between Lilith and Ida, because my god was that animation incredible, and the scene between Luce and Amity. We also get the reveal at the end of this episode that Lilith is being tasked with retrieving Ida for the Emperor. Lots of great stuff in here. Lost in Language is again an Amity episode, so of course I'm gonna like it. We get to see a softer side of Amity and also some insight into her home life when we see how her older twin siblings, Emera and Edric, treat her. We also see that Amity isn't as bad as she puts on when we get a look at her diary and see that she is capable of self-reflection and admitting to her faults. We also see that she doesn't hate Luce when she says that she's been trying to figure Luce out, showing that Amity has some interest in getting to know Luce better. And we take another big step in their potential friendship when Luce offers her Good Witch Azura book to Amity, and Amity promises to try and better herself in being nicer to Luce. So there you have it, both a spoiler-free and a spoiler first impressions video of The Owl House. It's off to an amazing start so far, and I truly feel this will be one of the big animated shows of the decade. So if you haven't already, I can't give my recommendation enough for watching The Owl House.